Welcome back, Giants fans, to another episode of Bet the Over. I'm your host, Kevbo, and we got some big news within this past 2 weeks in which the Giants addressed their defensive line with signing not one, but two defensive tackles in Shelby Harris and DJ Reader. So, getting into these signings. So, Shelby Harris and DJ Reader, obviously, they've been around the league for a long time. It's not necessarily a long term solution to the defensive tackle position. But for right now, it does plug a massive hole. So Shelby Harris was signed last week, middle of the week sometime. He signed a 1 year deal, $3 million. And then DJ Reader signed yesterday. What was that? One's the Tuesday, the 5th, Cinco de Mayo, a 2 year, $12.5 million, giving him a $6.25 million per year paycheck. And getting into this, obviously, if you've been paying attention, either through my channel, through the news, the Giants did trade Dexter Lawrence. This is not breaking news to anyone, I hope. If you're just finding this out now, you probably don't pay too much attention to football radio or NFL in general, but Giants traded their defensive tackle, Dexter Lawrence, to the Bengals, got the 10th overall pick, yada, yada, yada. We already went over that. But the defensive tackle position before they traded Dexter Lawrence was a big area of need. Last year, the Giants gave up by far the most rushing yards per attempt in the NFL. It was 5.1 or something along those lines. I'll throw the stats somewhere in the middle of the screen right now. And so, with that, obviously, you needed to address that. Giving up 5 yards a pop is absolutely horrendous. I feel like a good rushing percentage would be 4 yards per carry, and the Giants were giving up five. So basically, the other team needed to run the ball two times, and they would get a first down. So definitely an area of concern, and that was with one of the best defensive tackles in the league in Dexter Lawrence, giving up that many yards. So it was already an area of need, and then they go out and trade him away. Granted, they did get good value for the trade, but they desperately needed to address that position. I mean, they addressed it in the sixth round of the draft. So are you really expecting too much? But they go out, they sign Shelby Harris, DJ Reader. And the biggest thing about these guys is they're big. Pause. But they're defensive tackles. They've been around the league for a very long time, and they're both solid. I don't know if you'll ever create the havoc that Dexter Lawrence has had throughout his NFL career, but it's kind of a defensive tackle by committee now, whereas last year it was just Dexter Lawrence. Both DJ Reader and Shelby Harris have had great NFL careers. They command a lot of double teams, which is very, very important. Both of them are 60+%. I'll also throw it on the screen up there. DJ Reader and Dexter Lawrence, I think, basically got double teamed at the same rate or a very comparable rate. So that's definitely a positive because when two defensive tackles get double teamed, it's basically leaving your two edge rushers in Abdul Carter and Brian Burns, maybe even Arvell Reese now, but you're getting one on ones with them. And as you could tell by last year, Brian Birds absolutely feasted with these one-on-ones, considering he had 16 and a half sacks, and Abdul Carter had the 11th most pressures in the league. I know a lot of people were underwhelmed with his production last year, mostly just the sacks, and I get it. You definitely want him to be getting more sacks. He was the 5th overall pick or the 4th, but with the pressures, the sacks will come. He had the 11th most. He led all the rookies. He looked good last year. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but if you're just watching the games, you could tell he was definitely getting to the quarterback pretty quickly. The sacks just weren't coming along. He definitely got it towards the end of the season, but if you're just looking at his sack numbers, you can't tell me he had a bad season. I know they look bad, but if you're just looking at those numbers, you're not getting the full scope of the impact he had on the field. So overall, these two defensive tackles, great signings. They had to do it. They honestly did not have a choice. If they were going out there with their current defensive tackle group, they were cooked. I mean, Darius Alexander definitely needs to step up, and they're still one injury away from being a very bad group again. If either of these two guys get hurt in DJ Reader or Shelby Harris, it definitely would really bring down the rushing defense grade, and these guys have both been above average run defense grades for their NFL career so far. So that's kind of it for this episode. I haven't been uploading as much because there hasn't been too much news. I mean, I know the other biggest news is that it's speculated Joe Shane's going to be fired soon, but I don't know if that's going to happen because I kind of feel like they would have fired him already. I think if they were going to fire him, they should have just got rid of him when John Harbaugh was hired, and then he could get his GM that he wanted. Firing Joe Shane now would kind of be weird, in my opinion. I mean, it might happen. Uh, I think John Harbaugh's kind of running the show anyway. Joe Shane's kind of just there. And if you end up winning some games next year and John Harbaugh does really well, I mean Joe Shane's they're going to give him praise because they're winning games. Winning games heals all wounds in the NFL. You could be a horrible GM for 2 years. If you keep your job and your team goes out in the third year, you make the playoffs, win one game, the entire fan base will completely switch and you'll be praised. And that's kind of how not just the NFL works, but how all sports work. But I'm kind of going off on the tangent. Giants signed two great defensive tackles, address the D, which still I think needs improvement, and they're not long term set at that position, but it's definitely plugging a major hole in the run defense and the defensive tackle group. Comment down below what you guys think of these signings. I think overall they were pretty good. I think these were the two best defensive tackles they could have got. And like, comment, subscribe. I think next episode I might do some baseball just because, like I said, there's no real news with the NFL. And I am a Yankees fan, and they do look like one of the better teams in baseball. So maybe I'll get into that a little bit more. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your week.